In southern Africa, there is a country where winter snow closes mountain roads, children ride horses to school, and water from the Highlands sustains cities beyond its borders. Lesotho is completely surrounded by South Africa, yet every part of the country lies more than 3,000 feet above sea level. Here, altitude shapes how people travel, work, build homes, and adapt to distance and cold. This is Africa's hidden kingdom in the sky. The road into Lesotho does not end at a wall. It crosses a bridge. At Maseru Bridge, cars, minibuses, delivery trucks, and pedestrians move between South Africa and the capital from early morning onward. Below them, the Caledon River marks an international boundary, but daily life rarely feels neatly divided. Workers cross for jobs, families visit relatives, goods move in both directions. Lesotho is a sovereign kingdom surrounded entirely by South Africa. Yet its busiest gateway reveals how closely the two economies and communities remain connected. Maseru sits on lower ground than the dramatic highlands to the east. There are no snow-covered peaks above its central streets and no horse trails running through the commercial district. Instead, traffic gathers around taxi ranks, shop fronts open behind metal shutters, and vendors arrange produce beside the flow of commuters. Government offices, banks, schools, workshops, and small businesses pull people toward the city each morning. Farther south, the Thetsane industrial area begins its workday. Factory gates open, buses unload employees. Young men and women step inside carrying lunch containers, phones, and the quiet urgency of another shift. Some sew garments for export. Others work in offices, stores, transport, or informal trade. Their incomes support households that may stretch from Maseru's outer neighborhoods to villages far beyond the paved roads. The city changes block by block. In the center, music escapes from taxis and clothing stores. Smartphones glow in the hands of students waiting for rides. Western jackets, sneakers, and office clothes share the sidewalk with the Basotho blanket, still worn for warmth, identity, and habit. Tradition does not disappear beneath modern life. It moves through it. Beyond the main avenues, Maseru spreads into quieter residential districts. Concrete houses stand beside older homes. Children walk back from school, while relatives prepare evening meals behind courtyard walls. Satellite dishes face the sky. Laundry lifts in the dry wind. The city is not polished, and it is not static. It is growing through pressure, ambition, and constant exchange with the country beyond its border. Much of the outside world imagines Lesotho through ponies, shepherds, and mountain passes. Those images are real. But many Basotho begin their day under streetlights, factory roofs, and the sound of engines warming at a taxi rank. From central Maseru, the land rises toward the east. On the horizon, a flat-topped mountain breaks the line of the sky. To understand why this kingdom exists at all, the journey must begin there. The flat-topped mountain east of Maseru grows larger as the city falls behind. Roads narrow, traffic thins, and the open land begins to reveal why this plateau became the center of Basotho history. At its base, Thaba Bosiu Cultural Village introduces the forms, materials, and domestic spaces that still connect the present to the kingdom's beginnings. Reconstructed homes and courtyards place political history beside the ordinary routines of cooking, gathering, and family life. Above it, the real story waits on the summit. The climb follows a worn path past exposed stone, dry grass, and channels where rainwater runs after storms. Steep cliffs rise around the plateau, while the land below opens in every direction. From the top, movement across the surrounding plain can be seen long before it reaches the mountain. Defense is built into the landscape. In 1824, Moshoeshoe I brought his people to Thaba Bosiu during a period of upheaval across southern Africa. The plateau offered shelter, water, grazing land, and a position that was difficult to attack. Yet survival depended on more than height. Moshoeshoe strengthened the community through negotiation, alliances, and the acceptance of displaced groups who arrived seeking protection. Over time, people from different backgrounds were drawn into a shared Basotho identity. The summit remains quiet. Ruined walls mark former homes and defensive positions, while royal graves rest beneath the same wide sky that once watched over the settlement. Visitors move slowly between the stones. Guides recount history not as a distant sequence of battles, but as the foundation of a living nation. Each surviving trace gives the mountain a human scale, turning statehood into the remains of homes, paths, and shared labor. Nearby, Mount Kilone rises with a distinctive rounded profile. Its shape is closely associated with the mokorotlo, the woven hat that appears on Lesotho's flag and remains one of the country's most recognizable symbols. The national phrase, peace, rain, prosperity, also carries the logic of this landscape. Peace protects the people. Rain sustains the fields. Prosperity follows only when both endure. Thaba Bosiu explains why mountains hold such meaning in Lesotho. They are not empty barriers separating one community from another. They provide water, visibility, refuge, and a place from which a scattered population can become a nation. But safety was not always found on a summit. Elsewhere, families turned toward the cliffs themselves, building homes beneath stone, where the mountain became both roof and wall. Beyond Thaba Bosiu, the land of Berea opens into fields, scattered villages, and weathered sandstone cliffs. From a distance, Hakome appears almost empty. The rock face seems continuous, broken only by shadow. As the view moves closer, arched entrances begin to emerge beneath the overhang, revealing homes built into the mountain rather than placed against it. The dwellings follow the shape of the stone. Walls rise from earth, rock, and mud, while grass and reeds are used where additional covering or insulation is needed. Their rounded forms soften the force of the wind, and the sheltering cliff limits exposure to heat, cold, and rain. Nothing stands apart from the landscape. The buildings seem to continue it. The Basia and Bataung communities came to this protected place during a period of conflict and displacement. The rock overhang offered concealment and defense, but refuge alone did not create a home. Families shaped rooms, enclosed courtyards, stored grain, raised children, and adapted the available materials to daily needs. over generations, the shelter became a settlement. Inside one dwelling, the light is low and practical. A cooking fire warms the central space, its smoke darkening the surfaces above. Sleeping areas remain close to the heat. Food is stored away from damp ground and animals, while tools, containers, and handmade objects occupy the edges of the room. The same space supports cooking, resting, conversation, and work. An older woman tends the fire with practiced movements. She adjusts a pot, sorts materials by hand, and continues a routine shaped by years of repetition. Around her, the home carries evidence of change. Modern containers may sit beside older tools, and manufactured goods enter a structure built from the same earth that surrounds it. Daily life evolves without erasing the form of the house. Across Lesotho, other families live in rondavels made from stone, mud, grass, and reeds. These circular homes differ from the cave dwellings, but they answer many of the same conditions. Thick walls hold warmth after sunset. Rounded roofs shed rain and resist mountain wind. Building methods remain closely tied to what the land provides. Within these rooms, the Basotho blanket becomes more than a national symbol. It covers a sleeping child, shields an adult near the doorway, and carries warmth beyond the protection of the walls. Stone can shape a home, but the warmth people take with them begins in the wool of the northern hills. Beyond the stone shelters of the lowlands, the landscape opens into the northern valleys. Sheep and goats move across the slopes in scattered lines, watched by herders who read the weather in shifting cloud and wind. Their animals provide meat and income, but also wool and mohair, materials that connect remote pastures to workshops, markets, and homes across the country. The process begins far from any loom. Fleeces are gathered, sorted, cleaned, and prepared before they reach the hands of spinners, knitters, and weavers. Around Laribe, that work becomes visible at the Laribe Craft Center, where fiber from the surrounding countryside is turned into clothing, rugs, and other handmade goods. Needles move steadily. Looms set the rhythm. Craft here is not preserved only for display. It pays school costs, buys food, and supports households where dependable employment may be difficult to find. Each finished piece carries hours of labor that began with an animal grazing on a mountainside. The distance between pasture and marketplace is measured through many hands. No garment is more closely tied to Basotho identity than the blanket. It protects against cold mornings and sudden changes in mountain weather, but its meaning reaches beyond warmth. Blankets appear at weddings, mark important stages of adulthood, and can communicate status or belonging through their patterns and use. They are worn in villages, towns, ceremonies, and ordinary streets. Their international visibility grew when Basotho-inspired blankets appeared in Black Panther. Yet the deeper story remains local. Long before cinema introduced the designs to a global audience, families were already wrapping history, protection, and social meaning around their shoulders. North of Laribe, Lifafung Cave places that living tradition within a much older human landscape. Beneath the broad rock shelter, traces of San rock art remain on the stone. The site is also associated with Moshoshu I, linking different periods of occupation to the same protected space. Mountains preserve more than people. They preserve memory. Farther into Lesotho National Park, the scenery changes again. Forested slopes, mountain streams, and sheltered valleys reveal a greener Lesotho than the exposed highlands usually seen from a distance. Nearby villages continue to depend on grazing, small-scale agriculture, and craft work, drawing income from the same landscape that shapes their materials and routines. From these northern valleys, the road begins to climb. Beyond Maletsunyane, fields and villages recede, replaced by bare stone, low cloud, and a widening surface of water. Beyond the northern valleys, the road climbs toward Maletsunyane Pass. Fields thin out, villages become smaller, and the air changes quickly. Green slopes give way to exposed rock and low cloud, while wind moves across the ridges without shelter. At this elevation, weather can erase distance in minutes. Near Bokong Nature Reserve, water begins quietly. Wetlands hold rain and melting snow, releasing it into streams that descend through the highlands. Lepakoa Falls drops through a narrow mountain valley, carrying water toward larger rivers below. These upland marshes may appear empty, but they help regulate the flow that sustains farms, towns, and ecosystems far beyond the reserve. The scale changes at Katse. A massive concrete wall rises between steep mountains, while small houses remain scattered across the slopes above the reservoir. The contrast is immediate. One of southern Africa's largest water projects stands inside a landscape still shaped by grazing paths, village roads, and fields worked by hand. Katse Dam forms a central part of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project. Water collected in the mountain rivers is stored, directed through tunnels, and transferred toward South Africa, where major urban and industrial areas depend on it. The system also helps generate electricity for Lesotho. In a country with limited land and industry, water becomes more than a natural resource. It becomes income, energy, and political importance. Around Katse Reservoir, the new body of water creates its own routines. Small boats cross sections of the lake. Fishing provides food or additional earnings. Roads built for the project improve access to some communities, while visitors arrive to see the dam and surrounding highlands. Above the shoreline, cattle, sheep, and goats continue grazing on slopes that existed long before the reservoir. Development brings opportunity, but not without disruption. Roads, jobs, and public infrastructure connect places that were once harder to reach. At the same time, the reservoir changes familiar routes, grazing areas, and the relationship between villages and the valleys below. Progress leaves a visible shoreline. At Katse Botanical Garden, plants affected by construction were collected and protected. Among them is the spiral aloe, its tightly arranged leaves now serving as a reminder that development and conservation must occupy the same landscape. Near Highland, households continue to balance farming, livestock, transport, and the economic possibilities created by the water project. Lesotho stands above the countries around it, but its importance flows downhill. Still, beyond the dam walls and improved roads, many communities remain separated by mountains that modern engineering has not fully overcome. Beyond Katse, Roads continue into the central highlands, but distance is no longer measured only in miles. A village may appear close across a valley and still require a long descent, a river crossing, and another climb. In Thaba district, the shape of the land organizes each day before anyone leaves home. Morning begins with fire. Inside a stone or mud-walled house, an adult feeds dry fuel into the hearth while water heats for papa or porridge. Children pull on school uniforms, then wrap blankets over their shoulders against the cold air. Outside, gates open and sheep, goats and cattle move toward the grazing slopes. Some students walk along narrow paths. Others travel on horseback, where the route is too steep or distant for regular transport. Reaching school may depend on weather, river levels, and the condition of the trail. The same geography affects medical care. A clinic can be only a few valleys away, yet difficult to reach when roads are damaged or no vehicle is available. By midday, work spreads across the landscape. Families tend fields planted with crops suited to the cooler climate and short growing season, while herders follow animals across open grassland. Sheep and goats provide wool, mohair, meat, and income. Cattle carry social and economic value, while horses remain essential for movement between settlements. The land allows little waste. Steep ground limits cultivation, and sudden weather can damage crops before harvest. Small markets and district towns become important meeting points, drawing traders, workers, and families from scattered villages. Produce, household goods, livestock, and news move through the same crowded spaces. Employment remains limited in many rural communities. Some household income comes from relatives working in Maseru or South Africa, and those payments may cover food, school expenses, clothing, or repairs. Mobile phones keep distant family members present in daily decisions, even when the signal weakens between mountains. Electricity and reliable connectivity remain uneven. Late in the afternoon, children return along the same paths they traveled at dawn. Animals are counted and guided back towards stone enclosures. Inside, a shared meal closes the working day as radio music, recorded songs, or a phone screen brings the wider world into the room. Darkness arrives quickly. The temperature falls with it. Ambition reaches beyond the village, especially among younger people, but home remains tied to family, livestock, and land. Even in summer, distance shapes every choice. When winter snow settles over the eastern peaks, the entire rhythm of the highlands must change. Winter reaches the northeastern highlands quietly. Frost settles across roofs before sunrise, and thin sheets of ice form along shaded paths. Near Mokotlong, the air feels sharper with elevation, while wind moves across the open slopes without trees to slow it. Temperatures can change quickly even after a clear morning. Preparation begins long before snow arrives. Families store dry food, gather fuel, and repair walls or roofs before the coldest weeks. Blankets are kept close to sleeping areas, and clothing is layered carefully each morning. The mokorotlo may still appear, but knitted caps, heavy jackets, and Basotho blankets provide the warmth required for work outside. Livestock also shape winter planning. Sheep, goats, cattle, and horses must be guided toward available grazing and protected when weather closes in. Snow can cover grass, while ice makes familiar slopes more dangerous. Herders adjust routes according to wind, ground conditions, and what remains accessible. Daily schedules become less predictable. A school may open late when children cannot cross frozen paths. Market trips are postponed when roads become unsafe. Reaching a clinic takes longer if vehicles cannot climb, and supplies may arrive slowly from lower elevations. Winter narrows the distance people can travel, even when the next settlement remains visible across the valley. Sani Pass shows how fragile road connections can be. Its steep turns link the highlands with South Africa, but snow, ice, and low cloud can interrupt movement with little warning. Trucks wait, minibuses turn back, families change plans around the mountain, rather than expecting the mountain to change for them. Around Oxbow and the higher slopes, winter brings another kind of traffic. Visitors travel toward Frisky to experience snow in southern Africa, carrying skis, cameras, and insulated clothing. For them, the cold is temporary. For local workers, herders, shopkeepers, and families, the same snow affects wages, transport, livestock, and access to basic services. The difference is not suffering versus adventure. It is duration. Residents of the Highlands have learned to read cloud movement, conserve fuel, protect animals, and reorganize travel around conditions passed down through generations. Adaptation is built into routine. By late afternoon, smoke rises from scattered homes as temperatures fall again. Roads harden. Footpaths disappear beneath frost. Yet movement does not stop entirely. When engines can no longer trust the road, another form of transport continues across the slopes, finding a way forward without pavement. When winter roads become unreliable, the Basotho pony continues, where engines hesitate. From a village outside Semonkong, a compact mountain horse steps onto a narrow trail at first light. Its rider carries supplies behind the saddle. The route crosses stone, grass, and shallow water before joining the wider path toward town. The Basotho pony is small, muscular, and sure-footed. Generations of movement across steep ground have made it well suited to the highlands, where loose rock and sharp slopes can stop wheeled transport. It climbs without rushing. Each step is placed carefully. Across rural Lesotho, horses remain part of ordinary movement. Children ride or walk beside them on the way to school. Families use them to carry grain, fuel, tools, and household goods between villages. On Sundays, they bring people to church. When a clinic lies beyond the nearest road, a horse may shorten a journey that would otherwise take hours on foot. Semonkong gathers many of these routes. Riders arrive from surrounding settlements, animals wait beside shops, and goods are transferred between horses, taxis, and small trucks. The town is connected to the modern economy, but the final distance to many homes still depends on hooves. The trail toward Maletsunyane Falls leaves the busier streets behind. Local guides lead visitors across open grazing land and through villages where children pause beside stone walls to watch the horses pass. Pony trekking creates work for guides, horse owners, cooks, and small guest houses, allowing tourism income to move outward into households that maintain the animals year-round. The journey matters as much as the destination. Riders feel the gradient change beneath them, hear water before seeing it, and follow the same terrain local families cross for practical reasons. The horse does not turn the landscape into a spectacle. It makes the landscape passable. Maletsunyane appears only after the final rise. Water drops from the edge of a basalt cliff into the gorge below, while mist drifts upward through the colder air. The falls dominate the view, but the horses remain in the foreground, breathing steadily after the climb. By evening, the riders turn back towards Semenkong. Shadows lengthen across the grass, and the temperature falls behind the sun. One by one, the horses carry people home, along paths no road has replaced. Human roots in these mountains are measured in generations. Yet farther south, the cliffs preserve tracks and images left long before Lesotho had a name. South of Semenkong, the highlands widen into the sandstone country of Sehelabathibe. Broad grasslands stretch between weathered cliffs, natural arches, shallow lakes, and dark rock pools filled by seasonal rain. Caves open beneath the stone, while wind moves freely across the plateau. The landscape appears empty at first, but almost every surface holds evidence of an older presence. Under protected overhangs, San artists once painted animals, hunters, dancers, and figures connected to ritual life. These images were not simple records of daily activity. They reflected relationships between people, animals, healing, and the spiritual world. The rock face became a place where memory and belief could remain after the painters themselves had moved on. Sehelabathibe now forms part of the wider Maloti-Drakensberg World Heritage landscape. Its importance lies not only in scenery, but in the way natural and human history occupy the same ground. Sandstone shelters protected ancient art. High-altitude wetlands supported rare species. Open grasslands provided grazing for later communities who settled around the plateau. Farther south, near Kuthing, another layer of time appears in stone. Dinosaur footprints remain pressed into ancient rock, made long before people crossed these valleys. They are not displayed behind glass. They remain part of the landscape, exposed to sun, rain, and the slow erosion that reveals them. Three histories meet across southern Lesotho. Dinosaurs crossed the ground first. Sand communities later painted beneath the cliffs. Basotho families then built villages, grazed animals, and formed new relationships with the same mountains. None of these layers exists separately. Each survives because the highlands have preserved traces that lower, more heavily developed landscapes might have erased. That preservation is fragile. Fire can damage grasslands and rock shelters. Heavy grazing changes plant cover and soil. Tourism creates income, but unmanaged access can wear down sensitive sites. Environmental shifts affect wetlands, streams, and species already confined to narrow habitats. The bearded vulture circles above these ridges, while the Maloti minnow survives in cold mountain water. Both reveal how little space some species have left. Their future depends on decisions made not only by conservation authorities, but by the communities living beside grazing land, rivers, and protected areas. Local people do not stand outside this landscape. Their animals feed on it. Their income may depend on visitors, and their water begins within it. Protection must therefore include daily life rather than remove it. Lesotho has carried remarkable fragments of the past into the present. The harder question is what the kingdom will carry forward as roads expand, cities grow, and a younger generation looks beyond the mountains. In Marija, Lesotho's future grows beside its archives, music, and handmade crafts. Famo still carries the memory of Basotho workers who left the mountains for jobs in South Africa, but younger artists now combine its accordion sound with modern production. During the Marija Arts and Cultural Festival, tradition appears not as a museum piece, but as something still changing. Back in Maseru, new neighborhoods spread outward. Young people travel to schools, factories, offices, and shops with smartphones in their hands and modern clothes beneath Basotho blankets. Some remain in the city, while others return to their villages on weekends and holidays. The country still faces limited employment, migration, uneven infrastructure, and growing pressure on farming and water. Yet the mountains also create opportunity through community tourism, craftwork, energy, and the protection of cultural and natural heritage. Across Lesotho, a rural family closes its livestock enclosure. A craft worker folds a finished textile, and a young employee waits for transport home. The Basotho blanket remains with them all. The mountains once protected the nation. Today they provide water, grazing, income, and identity, while continuing to make travel and development difficult. Lesotho does not exist, despite its altitude. It was shaped by it. In Lesotho, the mountains are not the edge of life. They are where life begins.